Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Views from a Business Leader. In this episode, we talk to Alex Tatham, who's the Managing Director of Westcoast. So, good afternoon, Alex, and thank you very much for taking time out of your diary to talk to us today.
Well, it's absolutely a pleasure to be with you, Joe. It really is great.
Thank you very much. If you just want to let the viewers know, well, firstly, if you just want to introduce yourself and tell the viewers a little bit about what you do in Westcoast.
Yep, sure. Well, I'm Alex Tatham. I'm Westcoast's Managing Director. I've been the Managing Director now for around about 7 years at Westcoast. Westcoast are the Thames Valley's largest privately owned business. We are a former Chamber of Commerce Business of the Year. It's a business that's growing at around about 15% and turns over, 2.82 billion last year. Wow. It's a big old business and growing really well, something that the Thames Valley can be truly proud of. And I'm truly proud of being their managing director. Even at this time of terrible crisis, the business is trading really well.
Yeah, so you mentioned obviously time of crisis. Obviously, there's lots of businesses that are going through at the moment. How has it sort of impacted on Westcoast as a business?
Well, the first thing I think to say is that our business is very much a logistics business. So we have 3 warehouses, one based in Thiel near Reading, one in Milton Keynes, one in Andover, and then several others all the way across Europe. And the first thing we've done, of course, is send all of our office staff home. And they're obviously working from home where they can. And the next thing, of course, is we really had to make sure that we keep all our warehouse staff safe in the work that they're doing, because they are very much seen as key workers by all sectors of government, particularly the Department for Transport, the Department for Health, the Department for Education. All of these have given us interesting letters to say how important we are to them, because, of course, keeping the IT business flowing across the UK is absolutely where Westcoast sit at the heart of all of this. We deliver probably more IT than anyone else in the UK in terms of what we're doing to support home working. Yes. And the demand has obviously gone through the roof for that. Huge amounts of work for the NHS. So all of those Nightingale hospitals, all of the other hospitals, they all require an enormous amount more IT. You can imagine that HMRC and the Department for Work and Pensions, as they ramped up on this furlough scheme, huge amounts more IT required. And actually some of the banks, because they have actually had to do quite a lot of work to support small businesses, of course, yes, are putting an awful lot more IT in the hands of their home workers. I took an order the other day for £20 million for Lloyd's. So, wow. There is a really, really strong amount of business being done at the moment by Westcoast. In fact, our business was over 100% up in March, just on the PC business alone, as everyone demanded new laptops. And of course, I think that business is continuing at the moment. You're going to see some huge announcements coming up regarding education, regarding health, and Westcoast is going to sit at the heart of all of them.
Amazing. I guess that the working from home for businesses is the new norm at the moment. How have Westcoast addressed that with your own employees in terms of keeping morale up and keeping the communication levels to that premium that everybody seeks?
Well, the first thing is, and funny enough, I've just got off that call. We have a weekly call that I give to everyone across the business, no matter where you are in Europe, and I give a sort of an update of where the business is. As a board, we meet every day at 9 o'clock in the morning every day, just to go through some of the issues that we're facing, because it does feel as though that we're managing in the present at the moment.
Yes.
And it feels quite frustrating as a more strategic thinker to be able to have to manage in the present. But we have to do that first and foremost. Yeah. And then actually make sure that we keep all of our staff, whether they have been furloughed or not, on message to terms of what we're doing and how we're doing. Yes. And I'm very clear about how we're doing that. We've furloughed around about 10% of our staff.
Okay.
That is an ongoing process, because if I'm thinking about that, we as a business, as a privately owned business that's debt financed, we've absolutely got to make sure that we plan for the worst but hope for the best. And I think it's probably really healthy to have a healthy degree of pessimism at this point, as opposed to thinking it's all going to get better. I don't dispute there are opportunities, but I think at the moment we are thinking that we've got to plan for this to go on longer, and it's going to get more problematical as we go forward. Yeah. So we're really in the start of it at the moment, and I think that we've done a good job so far in planning and doing what we had to do to start off with. But now we're beginning to have a bigger and a longer term outlook as to what might happen and where we need to move staff to and put our resources.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things for business owners, directors out there is the planning, not knowing how long this is going to go on for. And I think planning for the worst is probably a good piece of advice, because if you can do that, and anything that is better than that is obviously going to stand you in good stead.
Yes, we're driving along a motorway in extremely foggy conditions, and we don't know where the cliff is.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's very difficult. And you mentioned about furloughing. Obviously, there was the coronavirus business impact tracker that the Thames Valley or the British Chamber of Commerce sent out to yes. small businesses. And they're basically talking about 66% of firms have already furloughed some of their staff, and 31% are going to be already furloughed between 75 to 100% of staff, which is obviously going to make a huge impact. So to actually only 10% is a really good level, I guess.
Well, I think there's two things there. Firstly, I've already said that actually Westcoast is trading extremely efficiently in most business areas.
Yes.
We've already talked about PCs, of course, but the accessories that go along with those PCs. We're also seeing still plenty of work in our cloud team as more people upgrade their licenses. And particularly to include Teams, of course, which you and I yes. are talking to at the moment. Yes. That's been a huge success story. Cyber security is absolutely critical. But where actually we've had business that has shrunk a lot, and that particularly is office printing and toner that goes along with that print, that's where we've done our furloughing. And clearly we furloughed some of the back office staff to make sure that we are focused ourselves on business critical elements of the business.
Yes.
But the business at the moment is predicting to be well ahead of its targets in April as well. And we can also see just about as far forward in May that actually we think that probably we're going to hit all the targets that we need to in May as well.
Yeah.
So there are some big decisions to make, but I want to make sure that we don't hamper the business. But as well as encourage all those people that are still working to work as hard as they can to make sure that the business thrives and survives at the end of all of this.
Absolutely. Business togetherness and sort of businesses working in tandem together, which is a big thing at the moment. And I know that you've sort of prioritised your orders for NHS and sort of the government department. How are your clients responding to that, if they have to wait that little bit extra for the products that you're providing?
Well, I think the first things that we've done is to focus on the NHS, as I think you'd expect us to. And actually what we've had to do there is take an extremely precious commodity, which is PCs, which are all made in China, of course, and therefore we saw a supply chain dip in February and early March. And this precious commodity, all of a sudden that people have been waiting for a long time, all of a sudden then got deallocated from some people's orders and reallocated to the NHS orders. And whilst we apologise to everyone that happened to, I don't think anyone has criticised us for doing so.
No.
Nevertheless, it's just beginning to free up now, where actually that the order cycle is beginning to normalise a little. And therefore, if you place an order on Westcoast, you may have a longer lead time, but you're going to get it, and I'm not going to pre-prioritise.
Yeah, well, I heard your current delivery time is sort of 90% within your normal delivery time frame.
Well, it's a bit better than that, actually. I mean, I think that we would have it around about 95%, something that we monitor all the time.
Yeah.
What the capacity is. We have reduced some of the flexibility that Westcoast is well known for. So we have said that you are not allowed to come and pick it up from our warehouse. The safety issues there.
Yeah.
And we can't do any same day deliveries. And we've made sure that we don't put extra strain on ourselves where we really can't cope. But if you take those two things out, effectively we're operating at about 95% capacity.
Yeah.
And the only reason we're not operating at 100% capacity is effectively that people in the warehouse can't all come into work all the time, and they've got family issues, home issues, they're sick, or whatever. So it's really important that we look after those people in particular, because they're keeping our business running.
No, absolutely. Getting back to the employee perspective, at the moment, there's lots of business owners at the moment having to adapt and having to do things in a way that they've never dreamed of doing things. Is there any sort of advice that you feel you could give to those business owners and directors out there that you're adopting and you're providing to your sort of management team to really boost employee well-being?
Yeah, well, the first and most important thing is communicate. Now, actually, I think that even when we were all together in the office, where communication is easy, you can still see people sending emails all the time. And I've said, stop sending emails, pick up the phone to your customers. They'll be absolutely delighted to speak to you, by the way. Yeah, and ask them how they are, and ask them if this Westcoast is anything that we can do to help them and get through this. So much more communication internally with each other. Make sure that actually that you are speaking to each other. We have regular team huddles, perhaps more than we ever would if we're all sitting in the same office together. And we have a huge open plan office at Westcoast, and that feels extraordinary that we don't have that anymore, and that level of communication. And actually, what we've done is to make sure that we and I address the company and tell them how it is. Be honest with them. Don't try and gloss over the difficult decisions that we've had to make, but make sure that they understand why we're doing it, and that actually that this is designed to make sure that we don't have to lay off any staff, and to make sure that the business thrives and survives as we go through it all. And I'm hoping that we've been honest enough with all of our staff to make sure that they feel that, and they can feel that this is a genuine desire to make sure that the business is surviving.
Yeah. People talk about the new norm in terms of this is going to be the new norm moving forward. Are Westcoast at the moment are you planning for this new norm in terms of, I guess, obviously the products and the scalability of the products that you're going to be delivering to market will ramp up or ramp down accordingly based on the new norm. What sort of planning have you been doing for next year and beyond?
Well, very little, in the past 4 weeks, because actually planning for next year, as I said, we've been managing in the present for the past 4 weeks. Really, is really making sure that we are capable, managing what's going on and what's incoming. Of course, these extraordinary level of business that has been required from us, extraordinary numbers that we've achieved in March. We were 50% up as a whole company in March. As I said, 100% up in PCs. It's just a really extraordinary level of demand. And a lot of that has been managing now. However, funny enough, I've just addressed the whole company and I gave them some good outlook. And one of those outlooks clearly is working from home. Because what's happened is that we're not alone in this. Lots of people, of course, have sent their staff home and working from home on pretty dodgy devices, I would have thought, with dodgy connections, with some fairly dodgy accessories, because everyone was scrabbling to get some. And of course, we have prioritised everything to the NHS.
Sure.
So actually what you're going to see, I think, is that business continuity plans, which clearly have been tested to their very limit over the past 4 weeks, as people come back into the office and begin to plan a little longer, you're going to see that get more robust going forward. So people will get better laptops, they will get better devices to connect to. They won't get the refurbished device any longer, or the one that was lying at the back of the IT office in order to be able to just connect someone just for the sake of getting some sort of connection.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see some really good long-term, that sort of medium-term plans over the next, in order to cope with that new norm, as you quite rightly point out, because it is pretty unlikely that all of us will be back in the office all of the time over the next year or so until we get a vaccine. So I think that we are now planning for a lot more working from home, and a lot of people have got to make sure that they can work from home.
Yeah.
And then when we reflect that onto what's going to happen with our students and pupils across schools, well, as I said, prepare for the most enormous quantity of connected devices coming, because it's inevitable that there's no way that they're going to leave another school year behind. There is going to be much better connection for every single pupil in our country.
100%. We've seen some amazing stories that have come out with what businesses are doing and how they're adapting, like I mentioned earlier. I think it'd be great just to share with the viewers some of the stuff you did do with the Nightingale Hospital, because I think it was an amazing project, and for businesses to get together and how that was constructed and the network around it was just phenomenal. Can you just share a little bit of that with us?
Well, there were so many, and lots of Berkshire businesses were involved in that, of course. Lots of different types of business getting involved in different types and parts of the business. Without question, though, that what you see is some of the larger manufacturers, particularly Hewlett-Packard, HP, who are Westcoast's largest supplier, were heavily involved in that, along with a lot of Westcoast staff, to make sure that we planned and make sure that we could deliver what was required for monitors, mice and keyboards, all the laptops and PCs, the tablets, a lot of the print was all done from Westcoast for the Nightingale Hospital in Excel. And of course, that was a very, very quick project. It opened within 2 weeks. So a lot of that had to be reprioritized from other orders, of course, as I already pointed out, and made sure that we can deliver into that project. And to a lot of resellers who are our West Coast customers, who actually then delivered and configured that product ready to go for that extraordinary effort that's been put into that hospital. Really, truly extraordinary. And of course, now you're seeing those hospitals being developed all the way across the country now. So there's still more to be done, and you can see more and more. But there's not just those temporary hospitals, because all the existing hospitals also needed upgrades and a lot more IT as well. So you've really seen a huge, huge impact with the NHS, and absolutely that's where we've been supporting it. And now, of course, we're now supporting secondary care as well as primary care for GP surgeries as well. So it really is just an enormous effort.
Being one of the biggest based businesses in Berkshire, Coronavirus Business Impact Tracker interviewed went out to a survey of over 700 businesses locally, and I know that you personally and your business wouldn't have had to go to banks for sort of funding and to help with cash flow and loans, but at the moment only 2% of the businesses within Berkshire have been successful in gaining the business interruption loan scheme that's been put out by the government. How important are the bank's roles in this current crisis, and is it concerning for you that number is so low?
Well, I look at it with two hats on here. If I look at the importance of our funders into Westcoast, actually the most important partner that we have is our credit insurer, a trader. So they have been utterly critical, and I think that they are going to be even more important than the banks going forward in terms of being able to support us all out of this. The second thing, however, is that banks that are clearly giving small businesses lifelines out there, clearly that is what the Chancellor of the Exchequer has asked them to do. They must do that, and they must do it well. They want to make sure that they come out of this shining as a shining beacon of how to do this well. And if the bankers aren't doing it well, they will be found out. I'm certain of that. Yes. And any small business that has suffered through no fault of their own must be able to get access to some kind of capability to keep the business in a stable state, because as soon as they don't pay essential services, and I would take Westcoast, for instance, as an essential service to many of our customers, but also, of course, we offer all the cloud services are being steered through Westcoast. That turns off because you can't pay your bill, then that is going to be, that's curtains. So it's an essential service. They've got to keep those essential services going, and banks must do that.
Yes, absolutely. Alex, probably the last one to leave you on, last question. I appreciate your time today. If there was sort of one main piece of advice that you would provide business owners, directors, managers out there, what is it, and why?
Let me say the first thing is that you be really honest with your staff. Tell them like it is. Don't gloss over things, and treat them as you'd like to be treated yourself. really be clear with them what your plans are and what you're going to do and how it may affect them. They will be going through just as terrible times as you are, and it's important to be able to empathise with them as well. So I would really make sure that you speak to your staff regularly, no matter whether you're a big business or a small business. You've got to make sure that you are addressing that your staff and all your employees, because they are really there to keep your company going, and you must do the best you can for them, but do not gloss over the difficult decisions you've got to make.
No, it's fantastic advice. And Alex, look, I really appreciate your time today. It's been great, and great to hear about some of the Westcoast stories. I think what you've been doing, certainly what you did with the Nightingales, are absolutely brilliant. The levels of the delivery, the logistics side of your business, and how you're keeping that up to that sort of premium time for your customers in such a bad time has been absolutely fantastic. So much appreciated, and keep up the good work from Westcoast.
Well, I can assure you that is our intention, and our job is to make sure that we keep the entire UK and all of Ireland as well, of course, going, whether it's the NHS, government, or any company. Our job is to supply that IT, do it really well, do it efficiently, and make sure that we keep the whole country connected. And of course, what would this crisis be if we weren't having some of that amazing IT that we've all got used to these days?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Alex. Let's hope the sun carries on shining, and have a lovely weekend.
And I certainly will. And same to you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.